Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. Hello, John.
Hello, sir.
Now we've heard some further interesting news with regard to bail-in.
Yes. So we have been talking about bail-in last year, and then we've done a recent video about bail-in. Basically, our analysis has been a banking expert and an economist looking at this from our lens and basically saying that the claims made by the officials of Treasury, Reserve Bank, APRA, they don't hold water in regards to the bail-in of deposits. They have all said that the bail-in of hybrid securities is the intent of the legislation, but deposits were not. We've gone through chapter and verse about why there are certain loopholes, and so we've provided our lens. But when we have said this, we've said we are not lawyers, but and we are obviously just coming at it from a economic/banking perspective. Well, so the Citizens Electoral Council, who have been very big on this issue, have gone and sought legal advice from a practicing solicitor, and that solicitor has provided confirmation about what we have said. So we're just, obviously let's take a step back. So this solicitor, Robert Butler, in the fullness of transparency, he has done work for the Citizens Electoral Council previously. The Citizens Electoral Council is a registered political party, and Bob Butler has previously made submissions to certain inquiries about bail-in. So he has a long established view on this whole subject. He thought there were other loopholes that he addressed in his submission, but in this legal advice, which we will publish on the DFA website, which goes through about 3 or 4 pages, this registered solicitor goes through some of his arguments for why he thinks bail-in of deposits is legal under the law as it stands, but it also looks at our particular thesis, and that is about the in terms of the deposit contracts and the ability of the banks and APRA to change these contracts without sufficient customer warning, and then using those new clauses in the deposit contracts to then order the bail-in of deposits to occur. The advice from Robert Butler, it is 3 short paragraphs. So I'm just going to bring this up on the screen just so we can go through what he said. So this is specifically about what you and I sort of said last year about deposit contracts. So this is Robert Butler. The quote, "The documentation issued by each Australian bank when opening such an account, as in a deposit account, has a provision which enables the bank to change the terms and conditions from time to time without the consent of the customer. The specifics of the power vary from bank to bank, but each fundamentally contain such a power. If APRA, as the prudential regulator, issued a prudential requirement regulation or a prudential standard requiring a bank to insert a provision into its documentation/instruments relating to deposit-taking accounts, providing for the bail-in of those deposits, their write-off or conversion, then those provisions would then clearly come within the specific provisions of conversion or write-off within the Act. And the deposit, the subject of the account, could be bailed in immediately. Such a directive could be issued by APRA in accordance with the secrecy provisions in the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority Act 1998 and be implemented with little or no notice to the account holder." So this is not Adams North anymore. We have a practicing lawyer, a solicitor, who has a independent legal practice, who has written 3 paragraphs in this more broader legal advice to say that the deposit contracts have a loophole. The banks can change these deposit terms and conditions at any time that they wish. They could easily insert clauses in there that says that these deposit contracts could be bailed in if that was required at the behest of APRA. And once those provisions or clauses are inserted into the terms and conditions, it then would actually comply with the Crisis Resolution Act that was passed by Parliament last year, and therefore the bail-in of deposits could potentially occur if the recapitalisation directive is issued by APRA. So he's looked at our arguments from a legal standpoint, and he thinks that we are on very solid ground. So in the last part of his legal advice, he refers specifically to this particular point and basically says that the Adams North's position, in his view, is legally sound, which therefore therefore contradicts all of the reassurances from Parliament, all of the reassurances from Treasury, all of the reassurances from APRA, so I don't think between now and the election anything's going to be done. So the question is for the new government and for Treasury under the new government, will they continue to hold the line that there's nothing to see here, or will they then say, in the light of new legal opinion, perhaps we either didn't write the law properly, or our interpretation of the law may be incorrect, or who knows what they'll do.
Well, it seems to me, John, that as we assume election will be announced very soon, right, and therefore there will be a campaign over the next month to 6 weeks, everybody watching this show, if they actually have a chance to interact with their local member, right, they should specifically ask this question, right, which is the bail-in actually completely able to protect deposits or not, right? Because the Treasury position is quite clear, nothing to see here. Bail-in is not going to capture deposits at all, despite the fact that in New Zealand, which is the most transparent version of bail-in around the world, it's absolutely clear that deposits are on the table in a bail-in situation. And we've shown that the current position in Australia is deliberately obfuscated in our view, and that the door is open for deposits here to be grabbed, and the legal opinion supports that.
Yes. So in the previous episode that we did, you said you've received 50 pieces of correspondence from viewers who have written to politicians.
Yep.
Now, we have a letter here that we will sort of show on the screen, dated October 2018 to a supporter of ours, and this letter came to us a few months ago, basically saying that that bail-in of deposits is not possible. It's not in the intent of the government. So the language is almost identical to the language that we've seen in these letters from politicians, which basically implies that the language from the politicians have come from Treasury. But it's one thing for the Parliament or the politicians to say something vis-a-vis the public servant. So the public servant said this can't happen. And now we have legal advice to say, well, that it potentially could happen. So now there's a difference of legal opinion. And once we publish this advice, I mean, I'm sure certain people may write back to politicians. They might write back to Treasury. I may write back to Treasury and say, we have a letter stating X from Treasury. We have a legal opinion stating Y. Surely that... if you wish to create confidence among depositors, you need to take further steps to ensure that the law is watertight, and there can be no wiggle room for APRA to be able to launch something that they say the government has no intent. Although the key thing here is, to date they've said the government has no intention to bail in deposits. Well, which government? It is the coalition government. We don't precisely know what the Labor government's intent on bail-in is. Now, I do know that Labor privately have been saying they expect a global shock. That shock will disrupt our financial system. As per the last episode, we know that Treasury is very concerned about the banking system and has had secret meetings in Europe about how to resolve some of these banking issues. So if APRA goes to Chris Bowen, who'll be the treasurer, and they say, well, you don't have many tools left, but you have this bail-in option, and it's the only way to stop a depression, we need a categorical statement from Labor that the tool won't be used, but it would be much more superior if Labor says, well, we recognise there's a loophole, and we are actually going to, within our first few months of government, seek to bring in new legislation to close the loophole.
Well, they should close the loophole clearly. The other point, of course, with this letter from the Treasury is, again, it mixes up the 250,000 deposit insurance, which may be activated later,
yes,
in a gone position, in other words, when a bank has failed,
yes,
with bail-in, which is specifically designed to stop a bank failing.
Exactly.
And it's precisely the same problem that we've had with, I've got now nearly 70 examples of letters where people have sent me responses from members and what have you, right? All with the same problem, right? So effectively they're saying, don't look at the bail-in, look at the $250,000 deposit insurance scheme, which doesn't exist, by the way, until it's activated, but they don't tell you that, right? So we need clarity, right? It's very, very unclear at the moment. The simplest way to solve this, if they're really serious about deposits not being bailed in, is simply to change the law and to make it clear that deposits are expressly excluded. If they aren't prepared to do that, then there is a fundamental flaw in the legislation, which means that deposits can be bailed in.
So again, if you have significant sums of money in your bank account, there is significant legal risk around this. The government won't address it. Everyone says there's nothing to see. We think there's something here. We now have a legal opinion that says there is something to see here. So now it's on the new government coming in, Labor. It's on the bureaucracy, but it's also perhaps on the if there are other independent lawyers who think that this legal advice is flawed. Well, let those lawyers come forward with their contrary legal opinion. But until then, every depositor should be studying what happened in Melbourne in 1892, 1893. They should be studying what happened in Cyprus in 2012. They should be studying the current regimes in place in the European Union, US, Canada, and New Zealand. And everyone should be alert to the risks that we all face, knowing that a global shock is coming within 27 months.
John, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Martin North, John Adams, in the interest of the people. See you next time.